This is Conversations with Cait, a podcast centered on the arts, culture, and race and gender politics. I'm Cait Malalay. Happy summer, guys. I hope you're all enjoying this beautiful weather and enjoying the outdoors, whether it's hanging out at the pool, going to the beach, or lying in a hammock with your feet kicked up while enjoying a good book. I know for me, one of my favorite things about summer is not only the nice hot weather, but the festivals. Last month, I attended two right in New York City, Philippines Fest and Reimagine Asian Fest. Philippines Fest celebrates Filipino heritage with food vendors, serving some popular Filipino dishes, music performances, and of course, karaoke. Reimagine Asian Fest, which is happening simultaneously as Philippines Fest this year, celebrates the vibrant and diverse flavors of Asian cuisine. Their mission is to bring communities together through food. Food feeds the soul. Food is our language. One of the things that I find interesting about language is that it's everywhere. Initially, what comes to mind is, well, it's just spoken, but language is so much more than that. It's a journey. Language is growth. Language is the way we communicate. Communication is everything and everywhere. It's what we consume. It's what we deliver. It's in music, both with and without lyrics. William Shakespeare once said that when words fail, music speaks. Language is what we read. Language is politics. Language is education. It's in the media that we consume. Speaking of language, did you know that August is Women in Translation Month? According to womenintranslation.org, this movement is a global effort centered around the idea that women who write in languages other than English deserve to be widely read and appreciated. At Reimagine Asian Fest, I had the pleasure of meeting Emily Shan, the author and creator of Jojo Adventure Books, a children's board book series that's written in both Cantonese and English. What inspired her to launch this project is that while she was shopping for books for her daughter Jojo, she had trouble finding bilingual books. Mandarin and Cantonese are the two main dialects in the Chinese language. According to Pew Research Center, about a third of U.S. Asians, that's 34%, speak only English in their homes. The remaining 66% speak a language other than English at home. The most common of these is Chinese, including Mandarin and Cantonese. So, what's the history behind the two dialects? According to a BBC article, Cantonese is believed to have originated after the fall of the Han Dynasty in 220 AD, when long periods of war caused northern Chinese to flee south, taking their ancient language with them. Mandarin was documented much later in the Yuan Dynasty in 14th century China, and was popularized across China by the Communist Party after taking power in 1949. When Hong Kong was under British rule until 1997, most local schools officially used English for instruction, but also taught in Cantonese. According to an Associated Press article, China launched a campaign to promote the primary usage of Mandarin, saying that 85% of its citizens will use the national language by 2025. Critics say that this push onto the education system and employment requirements is causing an erasure of minority language, such as Tibetan, Mongolian, and Cantonese. I have Emily Shan here on the phone, and she is here to share with us the story behind Jojo Books, her personal journey with the Cantonese language, and the importance of preserving our heritage. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emily. First off, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Of course. So my name is Emily Shan, and I was born and raised in Brooklyn by two immigrant parents from China. So I have two older brothers. So my brothers and I were all first generation Chinese American. And we were mostly in Brooklyn for all of our lives, except for when we went away for college. And I'm a New York City public school teacher for a little over 6 years. And last year I made the decision to become a stay-at-home mom for now, to raise my daughter, who I've dedicated this series to. Her name is Jojo, and the series is called Jojo Adventure Book.
What's the story behind Jojo books? What inspired you to launch a board book series?
So when Jojo was about 3 months old, my husband and I, we had been speaking to her in English that whole time. But we kind of switched gears and decided that we wanted to raise her bilingual and even multilingual if we can. And we really just wanted her to be able to grow up speaking Cantonese and understanding it so that she can communicate with older family members, especially those who don't speak as much English. So around that time, I was looking for board books for her because little hands can't really handle paper. So board books are sturdy enough that they can last the first couple of years. And a lot of the books in Chinese that I found, they were more catered towards Mandarin speaking families. Which is quite different. So I just decided that because I couldn't find too many options that were board books and could help me teach her Cantonese, I just decided to start the series to basically document the different adventures that we take her on, and in the same time I'm creating the resources for ourselves, as well as families like ourselves who want to be able to pass down that Cantonese language to this next generation and hopefully future generations beyond that. So I named it Jojo Adventure Books. So a Jojo adventure is basically any adventure, big or small, that Jojo goes on to help her learn about the world around her. And there really just are endless possibilities. But for now, I'm just going to stick with local adventures, right? So I started with going to the aquarium and then berry picking and going to the zoo.
You described that you learn more about the Cantonese language as you write more books. Can you describe your personal journey learning the language and staying connected with your heritage?
So growing up in a household with two parents whose first language is definitely not English, my brothers and I, we just naturally grew up learning to speak Cantonese, actually, as well as Chinese, which is another dialect in Chinese. And they're actually part of the same language group. In Chinese, there are 7 to 10 main language groups. So just like phonetically, certain words are pronounced differently. But we would kind of code switch between those two dialects. And then we also grew up watching TVB shows. So TVB is a television broadcasting company based in Hong Kong. And most of the population there also speak Cantonese. And then aside from speaking with family members and watching shows, I actually asked my parents to enroll me in Chinese school when I was in the 4th grade. And honestly, I can't remember where that desire came from. Like, they never forced me, but I just wanted to go to school to learn to read and write Chinese. So my mom brought me out to Chinatown in New York and just enrolled me in Chinese school one day.
You mentioned in one of your Instagram posts that you quit Chinese school right around middle school. What made you end Chinese school? Can you describe how this impacted you?
Okay. I actually don't remember the exact reason. I was in middle school at the time, so I think I was in the 8th grade. Yeah, so I was in my 5th year of Chinese school, and I was in public school. I was in 8th grade, and I guess my priorities and interests at the time just shifted. Like going to Chinese school every Saturday, it required taking the train for almost an hour, being at school for 3 hours, and then another hour back on the train. And I think I just really wanted to spend more time with my friends at the time. So I just decided I didn't want to go anymore. I know my parents weren't exactly happy about that decision. But in hindsight, I really wished I did finish off the school year and then another year, because I would have graduated if I finished the 6th year of Chinese school. It's kind of impacted me. Like, I don't feel as confident in my literacy in Chinese because I didn't exactly finish Chinese school. I do recognize enough characters to make sense of things in certain situations. Um, but I kind of just wish I learned more and like didn't stop at that point.
Which dialect did they primarily use when teaching?
So the school itself, they have two different programs. They have a program in Cantonese and another program in Mandarin. So you get to choose when you register. And since my family didn't really speak Mandarin, aside from my dad, we just went with the Cantonese program.
You mentioned that you've had an affinity for writing since middle school and used writing as an outlet as a form of expression. Were you always into advocacy? At what age did you realize that you wanted to really advocate for preserving the Cantonese language?
So it's funny that you bring that up because I actually didn't see it like from a framework of this as being advocacy work, but I guess it kind of is. Um, I I think when something is important to me, I will just take action to kind of like defend the cause however I can in the moment. I know there are a lot of individuals and organizations out there that are also working to preserve the Cantonese language as well as our history. And I truly admire that, and I really hope we can continue this work together.
Many Cantonese speakers address their concerns that their language will erase over time, but with efforts like yours, the Jojo Adventure series preserves it. I did a bit of reading on why it's becoming less spoken and the history between the two. The Chinese government pushes its citizens to use Mandarin only, and it is done through efforts such as through education. According to an Associated Press article, the government says that 85% of their citizens will use Mandarin. Along with the 2025 goal, the policy aims to make Mandarin virtually universal by 2035, including in rural areas and among ethnic minorities. I feel like this impacts at a global level. What are your thoughts on this?
So Mandarin is like one of the many dialects of the Chinese language, and I think that making one language universal can certainly have its benefits. However, I am a first generation Asian American, and growing up in New York City, I've just always been exposed to many different people and many different languages. So personally, I value that diversity, and I will always put my focus on passing down that Cantonese dialect. And it's still a part of my identity, so I hope that my daughter will also embrace that.
In an article I read by the South China Morning Post, in Guangzhou, formerly known as Canton, Shenzhen, and Dongguan, the author reported observing many grandparents speaking to their grandchildren in Mandarin and some parents switching between Mandarin and Cantonese. What are some of the main differences between Cantonese and Mandarin? This is probably subjective, but in your opinion, which one is more difficult to learn? And how about for non-Chinese speakers?
So Cantonese and Mandarin are both tonal languages. So Cantonese has 6 to 9 tones, whereas Mandarin has, I believe, 4 or 5. And you'll see Cantonese written with traditional Chinese characters, whereas Mandarin will typically be written in simplified Chinese characters. In Cantonese, there are also some words that you would only use in Cantonese, whereas written Mandarin can still be read aloud in Cantonese. It would just sound very formal since it's written for speaking in Mandarin versus colloquial Cantonese. And personally, for non-Chinese speakers, I think it's more difficult to learn Cantonese because there are so many more tones. Like, there's just a lot of similar sounding words, and if your tone is just a little bit off, you could be saying something completely different. So in my books, I only include up to 6 of the tones, because I think in some places they'll tell you that there are actually 9 tones in Cantonese. But it is a children's book, so I'm trying to keep it simple. Yeah.
Language is a very crucial aspect in the way we communicate. When we come to think of it, language isn't everything. In some Asian American families, however, there's a language barrier where children can't communicate as well as they'd like to with their loved ones, specifically among first generation Asian Americans and second generation Asian Americans. I'm a third generation Filipino American, and I know for me, my mother uses Tagalog words when she speaks to me, so that way I'm familiar with words and everyday phrases. What are some other small ways that we can overcome this and to continue to pass down language in addition to bilingual books like yours?
Thanks for sharing that. I think it's great that your mother incorporates Tagalog when she speaks to you, so you can still learn and understand that. Whether or not Jojo learns to read or write in Cantonese, my priority is really more for her to understand it and be able to have a conversation in Cantonese. And a lot of it does stem from just wanting her to be able to communicate with family members who aren't fluent in English. So basically, what your mother does is great. And I guess this is one of the small things we can do to pass down a language that isn't as widely spoken. And I guess the other thing you can do is look for resources because there's definitely a lot more out there now than there probably was when I was growing up. And while right now we don't currently let Jojo watch TV regularly, I know there are some streaming services that allow for the option to change the audio now to different languages. So I personally was really thrilled to see that Cantonese is available on services like Disney Plus. So when we are ready to allow for more screen time, I'm happy Jojo can actually enjoy shows while picking up Cantonese, which is similar to how my brothers and I picked it up. And as I guess I'll be watching the shows with her, so I can also brush up on my Cantonese as well.
Emily Shan, creator and author of the Jojo Adventure series, I thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Cait.
Thank you for listening to Conversations with Cait, a podcast centered on the arts, culture, and race and gender politics. Be sure to follow her Instagram at Jojo Adventure Books to receive updates on Jojo's fall adventures. When you support this project, you are encouraging the production of more Asian American representation in children's books, the creation of more resources to keep the Cantonese language alive and thriving for future generations, and you are supporting an Asian American woman-owned small business. You can also follow my Instagram at Kate_Malale_writes for updates on future articles and episodes. Happy Women in Translation Month and happy reading!